They tried to declare me mentally unfit right after stealing my lottery ticket, and they almost got away with it. Hi, I'm Lauren. On my 42nd birthday, I woke up alone in a hospital recovery room. No calls, no visitors, just silence. And forged documents in my name. A week later, I realized the same family who left me there was trying to cash in my winnings, $10 million that they thought I'd never be alert enough to claim. But they forgot something. I remember everything. Before we dive into the story, let's connect. Have you ever felt stuck, searching for the depths of manifestation? Drop a 3 in the comments if you're ready to unlock your true potential, or a 4 if you're still finding your way. Let's start this journey together. I don't remember the moment the anesthesia took hold. I remember the nurse adjusting the IV, the soft pinch in my arm, the rustling of her scrubs. Then the ceiling tiles blurred, like someone smeared fingerprints across my memory, and everything went dark. What I do remember is the chocolate mints. I'd packed them carefully in my coat pocket that morning, same kind my grandmother used to keep in her purse. I thought they'd be a small comfort after the procedure, something sweet to mark turning 42. It wasn't a milestone, but it felt worth honoring, if only quietly. My mother had promised they'd be there. She'd circled the date on the kitchen calendar in red marker. "Don't worry, Lauren," she'd said. "We'll come get you after. Just rest easy." I believed her. The surgery was nothing major, just a routine outpatient procedure, the kind people walk out from with a little gauze and an appointment card for a follow-up. I wore my softest sweatshirt, brought the copy of that old Virginia Woolf novel I'd never finished, and slipped into the car that morning feeling halfway hopeful. The air outside had that Ohio kind of chill that clings to your sleeves, the kind that makes you tuck your chin deeper into your collar. The rideshare driver made polite conversation. I nodded along, more focused on the smell of the hospital lobby, antiseptic, plastic, and faintly citrus. I signed the forms. They put a bracelet around my wrist. I handed over my phone and watched it slide into a gray bin under the nurse's counter. Then I followed a woman in pale blue scrubs into a room with no windows and let myself be prepped under fluorescent lights. Somewhere above me, the clock ticked past 8. When I woke up, it was early afternoon. The ceiling was still white, but the light had shifted. Warmer now, lower. My throat felt dry, like I'd swallowed a handful of dust. A nurse appeared, smile painted on like she'd worn it too many shifts in a row. "You're in recovery," she said gently. "You did great." I tried to speak, but only managed a nod. My lips were cracked. My tongue moved slow. She offered me a small paper cup of water with a bent straw and asked, "Do you have someone coming for you?" "Yes," I rasped. "My parents. They said they'd be here." She smiled again. That tight, practiced kind. "Okay, we'll keep an eye out." They wheeled me to a recliner behind a curtain. The room buzzed softly, machines humming, someone laughing across the way. A teenage boy was telling his dad about missing a midterm. A woman in her 60s mentioned chicken noodle soup waiting at home. I waited. I watched shadows move beneath the curtain as families came and went. The mints sat heavy in my coat pocket, untouched. 1 hour passed, then another. No one pulled back my curtain, no familiar footsteps. I asked a nurse to check again. She returned with a vague shrug. "Still no sign," she said, avoiding my eyes. The recovery room emptied, one patient at a time, until only I remained. A janitor came in with a mop, humming something I didn't recognize. As she worked, she leaned toward another staff member and said, not unkindly, just factually, "That one's still here. Her folks left hours ago. Didn't even ask how she was." My fingers clenched the blanket on my lap. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. Just let the words ring out in my mind like an echo in an empty hallway. Didn't even ask. Eventually, someone brought me a sandwich I couldn't eat. I sat for what felt like years. Then, close to 7, a nurse came in and said they could discharge me if I felt steady enough. I nodded, because what else could I do? They handed me a small envelope with my billing summary. I opened it, more from habit than anything. My vision was still slightly blurry, but I caught the name printed near the top. Sophie Chen. Not me. My hand shook as I read it again. My sister's name, her insurance information, her emergency contact line. None of it matched what I had submitted. None of it belonged to me. I asked the nurse if this was a mistake. She looked at the screen, tapped a few keys, and said, "It's what was authorized during check-in." "I didn't authorize that," I said. My voice sounded foreign, hollow. She offered a vague apology, said I could follow up with billing, and handed me my coat. Outside, the wind had picked up. The lot was mostly empty. I stood there for a moment, coat hanging off one shoulder, paper in one hand, phone finally back in the other. No calls, no texts, no battery left. I fumbled in my pocket, pulled out the box of mints, and stared at them. My hands were still shaking. They didn't forget me. They erased me. The box of mints was still in my coat pocket when I got home. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight to the kitchen trash, lifted the lid, and dropped them in. The thud they made was too soft for the weight they carried. The apartment smelled like neglect. Not rot, not filth, just the particular stillness of a place left untouched for too long. Unwashed dishes stacked neatly in the sink. Junk mail curled at the corners, half fallen from the counter. I clicked on the light and flinched as it flickered before holding. My phone, finally charged, lit up on the side table with a blank lock screen. No missed calls, no messages, except one voicemail. It was from my mother. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the play button. Then I tapped. Her voice came through low and tight. "If you know what's good for you, stay quiet. Let it go, Lauren. Don't ruin things for the rest of us." That was all. No greeting. No mention of my health. No apology. Just an order disguised as concern. I didn't replay it. I didn't delete it either. I simply sat down at the edge of the couch and stared at the floor. My hands lay flat on my thighs, cold despite the apartment's stale warmth. A minute passed, maybe 10. Then I stood up, found my shoes, and left. The outpatient center had quieted since yesterday, but the lobby still hummed with that same sterile hum. I asked for records. A woman at the front desk barely looked up. "You'll need to fill out a request," she said. "Processing takes 3 to 5 business days." "I just want to see my file," I said. "I'm not asking for a copy." She gave a neutral smile. "Policy is policy." I pressed. She sighed. Eventually, a young man from the records office appeared, leading me down a quiet hallway near radiology. The office smelled like toner and laminate. He asked for my ID and typed something into his keyboard with 2 fingers. "I'd like to review my medical documents," I said. "All of them, and anything notarized." He looked at me a little longer than necessary, then slid a folder across the desk. "You can read in here," he said. "No photocopies without supervisor sign-off." I opened the folder slowly. The first few pages were what I expected. Pre-op assessments, standard disclaimers. But then I saw it. Power of attorney, signed in my name. Except it wasn't my handwriting, not even close. It looked like someone trying too hard to mimic a version of me they'd seen once. The letters were too neat, the loops unnatural. The notary stamp in the bottom corner was slightly smudged, and the date didn't match anything I recalled. I checked the font. Helvetica, not the system standard. Something about that made it worse. I didn't say anything. I pulled out my phone, took a clean, well-framed photo, and created a new folder. Proof. Back home, I dumped the photo into the folder, renamed the file, POA Scan 01 JPEG. Then I opened a blank document and typed a heading. Timeline discrepancies. Initial. Under it, I listed what I remembered authorizing and what this document claimed. My stomach twisted as I typed. The keyboard clacked softly in the otherwise silent room. The mints were already buried beneath coffee grounds and old receipts. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just kept opening new folders, backups, notes, screenshots. Drafted an email to the hospital's legal department, never sent it. Saved it in a folder labeled Drafts Not Yet. Around midnight, there was a knock at the door. Not loud, not urgent, just there. I checked the peephole. A woman in light blue scrubs stood in the hallway, hair pulled back into a tight twist. I opened the door just enough to see her face clearly. "You're Lauren, right?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "I'm Raina. I was on shift during your recovery." I didn't say anything. She looked down the hallway, then reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I'm not supposed to do this," she whispered, "but take this. Just don't show anyone until you're off hospital property." I took the note. Our fingers didn't touch. "There's more going on than you think," she added. "You didn't hear that from me." Before I could ask anything, she turned and walked away, her steps fast but controlled. Inside, I unfolded the note. No names, just 4 words written in all caps. "Get a second copy." No signature. The next morning, I opened Facebook out of muscle memory, just something to fill the space while waiting for my tea to steep. The first image that popped up was a backyard party. String lights, a table with drinks and finger food, and a large banner that stretched across the fence. "Happy birthday, Sophie plus Lauren." There was my sister, smiling in a peach dress I hadn't seen in years. My parents stood beside her, holding cups, beaming. An uncle I hadn't spoken to since the family reunion was grilling in the corner. No one had called, no one had texted. But there it was, a party with my name on the banner. My absence blurred into celebration. I didn't cry. I saved the image, dropped it into PROOF, then clicked open a new folder, renamed it Phase 2, and I kept going. My name didn't fade. It was deleted. I sat at the dining table, laptop open, a half-drunk mug of coffee beside it, steam long since gone. The apartment was quiet except for the faint ticking of the wall clock and the occasional creak of old floorboards. It had taken me 2 days to work up to this, not because I didn't know how to look, but because I did. The Family Trust portal hadn't changed much since I helped set it up back in 2020. My father had never been comfortable with passwords. I was the one who'd organized the folders, updated contact info, double-checked the legal wording. I remembered the language we'd used because I'd written some of it. When the page loaded, I typed in my login and paused. Then I pressed enter. The dashboard appeared with a soft ding. Beneficiary tab. Click. There it was. One name. Sophie Chen, primary and sole beneficiary. I stared at the screen, blinking slowly. No backup, no in the event of, no secondary. Just Sophie. There used to be 2 names there. The timestamp on the change read May 2nd, 2023. Below it, a digital signature. My name, supposedly, except the font was off. The letters didn't flow right. My signature curves inward at the L, loops at the H. This one leaned stiffly to the right, like someone had tried to draw it from memory. And the authorizing party? Lorraine M. Chen. I sat back in the chair, my breath shallow. My mother hadn't even tried to hide it. Later that afternoon, I drove to a notary office I'd found online. Small brick building between a dry cleaner and a vape shop. The clerk behind the counter didn't look surprised when I asked for access to recent estate filings. She tapped her keyboard, then tilted the monitor toward me. "You sure you're on this one?" My name wasn't there. Not in the clauses, not in the addenda, not even as a witness. "Can I get a certified copy?" I asked. She nodded, printed the page, stapled it, and slid it across the counter. I paid in cash. Back home, I dropped it into my binder, behind the power of attorney forgery, labeled the tab, tab 3, full exclusion. I didn't pace. I didn't yell. I made tea, opened my laptop. The cursor blinked in a fresh document. What had once felt like grief now felt like evidence. Around 6, I opened Instagram, out of habit, not curiosity. Sophie's face filled the screen almost instantly. She was mid-sentence, grinning into a podcast mic, sitting in a room made to look rustic and intentional. Fake wood panels, dried eucalyptus on a shelf, some quote about success in a thrifted frame behind her. And around her neck, catching the light every time she moved, my grandmother's locket, gold, oval, engraved on the back. Margaret, 1938. It had been missing since the funeral. Grandma had let me wear it on my 16th birthday. She told me it would be mine someday. I believed her. I paused the video and zoomed in. That was it. The same chain, the same clasp. I took a screenshot, saved it in the folder. Then I started pulling out old papers, medical forms, credit card renewals, appointment reminders. Scanned them all. Some were subtle. A canceled dentist visit I never asked to cancel. A mailing address change I never submitted. Others were bolder. An account opened in my name that I didn't recognize. Little cuts, none fatal, all strategic. Around 9 p.m., a new email pinged my inbox. No subject, no name, just, "Please read this." "It's overdue." I opened it. 7 lines. "I assisted in your surgery 2 weeks ago. I'm not proud of what I saw. Your family requested prolonged sedation, claimed it was better for everyone if you were kept calm. They didn't want you conscious too early, didn't want you fighting. I couldn't say anything then. I was new. I was scared. But I followed your story. I'm sorry, you deserve to know." No signature, no attachments. The sender's email was a string of random letters and numbers. I read it once, then again, and then I printed it. Slipped it into the binder behind the will copy behind the trust documents. Labeled the tab 4, medical interference. Below the printed email, I wrote in pen. They drugged me so I wouldn't fight. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt deliberate. That night, I didn't lie in bed staring at the ceiling. I opened a clean sheet of paper, wrote down 3 names, 2 attorneys, 1 therapist, appointments made for later that week. I'd follow up with confirmations tomorrow. I wasn't unraveling. I was preparing. The envelope didn't look like much, just a standard manila folder taped shut and slipped under my apartment door while I was boiling water for oatmeal. But when I peeled it open and saw the county court seal, my hands stopped moving. Petition for mental health evaluation. I sat down slowly at the kitchen table, the steam from the kettle curling behind me, untouched. It was all there in black and white. Allegations of paranoia, emotional instability, a fixation on fabricated conspiracies. They'd included quotes, things I had said, twisted and reframed. My careful words now looked like warning signs, red flags. The documents were co-signed by Barbara and Joe from 3C West, the couple who used to bring over peppermint bark at Christmas and once asked to borrow my folding table. I turned the page. The petition had been filed by my parents. No call, no warning. Just a full frontal legal declaration. We believe our daughter is no longer of sound mind. My mother always said, the loudest person in the room is usually wrong. But this was the opposite. This was silence weaponized, and I was supposed to sit quietly while they made it law. I didn't call them. I didn't yell. I put the papers in my binder right behind tab 4, labeled it in pencil first, then ink, tab 5, psych petition. But I wasn't okay. Not really. Around noon, I drove to Aunt Moira's house. She was my mother's younger sister, the one who always wore floral aprons and kept lemon candies in a glass jar near the door. The porch light was already on, even though it was barely past midday. Her house always smelled like polish and overcooked tea. She answered the door with a dish towel slung over one shoulder. "Lauren," she said, as if she'd been expecting me. I didn't waste time. I held out the envelope. She took it with both hands, flipping through the pages while standing in the foyer. "They filed this?" I nodded. We sat in her kitchen. The table hadn't changed since I was a kid. Blue ceramic tile, one chip near the corner where I once dropped a mug. She poured tea, too strong and too bitter, into chipped white cups. "They think I'm unstable," I said. She didn't respond. "I need help." Moira folded the papers neatly and set them down. Her eyes didn't meet mine. "Honey," she began softly, "maybe it's better to go along with the process. Just let them evaluate. If there's nothing wrong, then you'll be cleared." I blinked. "You think I should prove I'm sane to people who forged my signature?" "I think." She sighed, rubbing her thumb along the rim of the cup. "I think you've stirred up a lot of things, and your mother doesn't like being questioned." This isn't about discomfort, Moira. They're trying to erase me. Again. She flinched at my tone, then looked down. I love you, but I can't go against the whole family. That was it. I left the tea untouched and walked out without another word. Back home, the first thing I did was search a trauma support forum I had bookmarked months ago. I'd never posted, but I'd read the threads. Someone had once mentioned a lawyer named Hannah Becker, based in Columbus, handled family trust cases, quiet but ruthless. I emailed her office. Got a reply within 2 hours. The appointment was for the next morning. Her office was in a converted brownstone near the courthouse. No sign out front, just her name etched into the frosted glass of the door. The waiting area had no magazines, no music, just a ficus that looked like it hadn't been watered in a while and a receptionist who barely glanced up when I arrived. Hannah Becker looked like someone who had long since stopped trying to please people. Her hair was pulled back tight, blazer dark gray, her nails short and unpolished. She didn't shake my hand, just gestured to the chair. I understand you have documentation, she said. I placed the binder on the desk. It landed with a soft but decisive thud. She opened it, flipped past the first tab, then the second. She didn't speak, just made notes with a silver pen that clicked softly after each line. When she reached the trust papers, her pen stopped. That's not your signature, she said. No. She turned to the next tab. Medical interference? I slid a second printout toward her, the email from the anonymous sender. She read it twice, then leaned back in her chair. This is not paranoia, she said. This is fraud. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I exhaled. There's more, I said. I pulled a USB drive from my coat pocket and handed it to her. She plugged it into her laptop, opened the file. Grainy hospital footage appeared on screen. My parents, Evelyn and Thomas Chen, wheeling an empty chair through the post-op exit, walking briskly, eyes fixed ahead. No nurse, no discharge paperwork, no patient. Hannah watched it twice. The second time, she took stills. Then she shut the laptop and leaned forward. You're not defending yourself anymore, she said quietly. You're building a case. The air in the attorney's office wasn't cold, but my mother's eyes were. She sat 2 seats away from me in the bland, beige conference room, a stiff gray coat draped over her shoulders, even though the radiator hissed gently in the corner. She hadn't acknowledged me when I walked in. Neither had my father. Sophie looked everywhere but at me. Her nails pristine, her mouth a thin line. Across the table, Hannah Becker opened her folder with the calm of someone sorting laundry. No courtroom, no raised voices, just quiet space and consequence. The judge appeared on the screen mounted at the end of the room, centered between 2 dusty fake plants. Her voice crackled through the speakers, neutral and clipped. Good afternoon. This proceeding is to evaluate the petition for mental health assessment submitted against Ms. Lauren Chen and the counter evidence presented by counsel. No one spoke. Hannah stood. Your Honor, we'll begin with documentation. She placed 3 sheets of paper on the table, each in a clear plastic sleeve. The judge waited. These are signed authorizations, power of attorney, trust revisions, and a change of emergency contact filed during a medical procedure. Each contains signature inconsistencies, mismatched handwriting, non-standard formatting, incorrect dates. Attached are side-by-side comparisons of Ms. Chen's verified signature. She handed a packet to the clerk, who fed it through the document scanner while the judge reviewed the digital file. Additionally, Hannah continued, we submit Exhibit B, time-stamped hospital footage. She clicked her laptop. The video played silently. There were my parents, walking briskly through the post-op hallway, pushing an empty wheelchair toward the garage exit. No nurse, no paperwork, no conversation. Just their backs, moving with intention. The judge's face didn't change. This confirms the patient was left unaccompanied? Yes, Your Honor. No discharge recorded, no explanation filed. Sophie shifted in her seat. My mother's fingers pressed tighter around the base of her cup. My father stared at the table. Hannah didn't glance at them. She clicked to the next file. Exhibit C, a voicemail from Evelyn Chen to her daughter, dated October 25th. The speaker clicked. My mother's voice filled the room, flat and clipped. If you know what's good for you, stay quiet. Let it go, Lauren. Don't ruin things for the rest of us. Silence fell like snow, soft but suffocating. The judge nodded. Understood. Hannah didn't pause. We also have a live statement from Raina Morris, licensed RN on duty the day of Ms. Chen's surgery. Ms. Morris? The monitor split. Raina appeared in scrubs, seated in what looked like a neutral hospital conference room. Her face was pale but steady. Ms. Morris, the judge said, you understand you're under oath? Yes, ma'am. You may proceed, Hannah said. I was assigned to post-op recovery on October 25th. Ms. Chen's chart was updated during pre-op to include extended sedation instructions, not medically indicated, and entered under the emergency contact name of Sophie Chen, not the patient herself. And the discharge? There was none. The patient was missing when I returned to the bay. Her parents stated she'd been discharged, but no nurse signed the form. No physician authorized it. Did you find a note? Raina lifted a scanned document into frame. This was on the tray table. Lauren Chen, written in all caps. Uneven handwriting, unfamiliar style. I've reviewed Ms. Chen's signed paperwork. This does not match. She looked into the camera. I believe it was forged. My mother's mouth opened. The judge raised one hand. Mrs. Chen, you will not interrupt. My mother's lips closed. My father looked down again. The judge turned back to the screen. I've reviewed the submitted materials. Given the nature of the inconsistencies, corroborating testimony, and documented attempts to reassign agency through questionable means, the original petition for mental health evaluation is denied. No one moved. We are opening a formal investigation into medical fraud and inheritance interference. Any further action from either party must go through formal counsel. The screen went black. I didn't speak, didn't flinch. I just sat there. The chair under me suddenly more solid than it had felt before. My parents didn't meet my eyes. Sophie stood first, clutching her handbag like it might carry her out of the room faster. They left together, 3 shadows walking out slower than they'd come in. Outside, the sky was heavy with November gray. Hannah walked beside me to the sidewalk. She didn't say much, just handed me a thick folder. Tabs labeled in her crisp handwriting. Your name is back where it belongs, she said simply, and that was all. My name is still mine, even if they never say it again. The new apartment is smaller, 1 bedroom, creaky floors, windows that fog in the morning, but it's mine. The walls are bare, the furniture donated or secondhand, and nothing matches. I keep the kettle on the stove and my binder in the drawer beneath it. It's quiet here. Not the kind that weighs on your chest, but the kind that lets you breathe without looking over your shoulder. I unpacked slowly, 1 box at a time. No rush. There's something sacred about doing things on your own timeline after everyone else has tried to take it from you. I named it the Second Voice Foundation. We filed the paperwork 2 weeks after the judge's ruling. The office is modest, a former insurance space with beige walls and linoleum floors, tucked between a laundromat and a nail salon on the east side. The sign out front is temporary. The mugs are chipped. The heating hums too loud in the afternoons. But the windows let in good light, and we keep the coffee strong. Raina comes in every morning at 8:15 with a canvas tote full of folders and handwritten notes. She talks fast and moves faster, but she always brings a second mug for me. We have 14 nurses signed up for the first workshop, 14 people willing to sit and listen to stories like mine, stories that usually go unheard. It's not a headline, it's not a campaign, but it's something, and it's real. The letter came on a Tuesday, cream-colored envelope, no return address. The handwriting was too familiar. I didn't open it, just stood there for a while, looking at my name written in my mother's careful cursive. It had been months since I'd seen it. She hadn't spoken at the hearing. hadn't written since. And now, this. I slid the envelope into the fireproof box under my bed, next to the deed, the court documents, and the only photograph I kept from childhood. Maybe one day I'll read it, but not today. 2 days later, another envelope arrived, this one with no handwriting at all, just a typewritten note on printer paper. You don't know me, but I know you. Your story made it to my nurse's inbox. She read it out loud during lunch. I was 3 weeks away from signing something I didn't understand. Your silence saved me. Thank you for screaming when I couldn't. I folded the letter gently, slid it between the pages of my notebook, and sat by the window for a while. The street below was half covered in early snow. Kids in coats too big walked to the bus stop. Somewhere nearby, a wind chime rattled on a porch. I hadn't checked my phone all morning. I didn't need to. That afternoon, I turned on my computer, opened the folder labeled voicemails, and selected all. They blinked, then vanished. No backup this time. The silence afterward wasn't empty. It was clean. Raina walked in, cheeks pink from the cold, holding 2 lattes. She dropped her bag, kicked the door closed with her foot, and said, "You ready?" I smiled. "Yeah, let's do it." The workshop started at 6 o'clock. 14 chairs, 2 clipboards each, a printed agenda. I stood near the window, looking out across the parking lot while Raina arranged name tags in a slow arc. The sun was already gone. Just city lights now, flickering behind glass. When I got home that night, I boiled water for tea and sat on the couch in my socks, watching the steam rise from the mug. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel broken. I just felt here. And that was enough. If you're reading this and you've been erased, know this: you're not alone. I hear you. Sometimes silence isn't surrender. It's a seed. Given time, care, and truth, it grows into something stronger than noise, clarity. What I've learned is this: being erased doesn't mean you're gone. When we honor our voice, even after others try to take it, we begin to build something no one else can control. Healing doesn't always mean reunion. Sometimes it's the quiet dignity of choosing peace over proving a point. If this story stirred something in you, I'd love to hear it. Whether you've been pushed aside or found your own second voice, your experience matters. Let's keep the conversation going together.